So, our police protection work was mistaken, not to protect the wife and daughter of Liu Weiguo, because Liu Weiguo is a good person. The Liu family never troubled the He family after Jasmine Gan's death. The murderer would not target Liu Weiguo's widow and daughter. According to the description of He Jianxing's mother, besides the pairs of Lily Wang and Su Yao and their sons, the one who was most aggressive towards the He family was Lily Wang's brother. It seems that he is the key protection target. Greg Wong thought for a moment and realized that he couldn't harbor this kind of wishful thinking. Perhaps the murderer's goal was to kill everyone who had troubled the He family. Therefore, it was not enough to only protect Lily Wang's brother and his family. Of course, it's also possible that the murderer might target Vincent Fan, who could be said to have indirectly caused He Jianxing's death. But Vincent Fan is part of the police station and is aware of both cases, with high professional vigilance, making it almost impossible to target him. Moreover, Vincent Fan lives in the same community as the county committee leaders, which is said to have strict security, unlike the Binjiang community where the murderer can come and go freely. The murderer has no opportunity to act. I'll go back to the station and rearrange the next steps of our work. Greg Wong raised his head and exhaled. Jacqueline glanced at him and asked, "Boss, I just remembered something. Leo Liu visited the He family over 3 weeks ago. Do you think it's a coincidence?" "What coincidence?" Greg Wong didn't understand at first. River's kidnapping happened just 3 weeks ago. Greg Wong suddenly realized, slapped his forehead, and said he was visiting the He family on behalf of a classmate. Jasmine Gan had been dead for a month and a half by then. Why didn't he come earlier and waited so long to visit? Jacqueline said, "Boss, you've seen Leo Liu with your own eyes. Does he look like the fat man in the video?" Greg Wong frowned and recalled, "He's a bit shorter than me, about 1.7 meters tall, visibly overweight." "Hey, now that you mention it, I think he does look a bit like him." Jacqueline continued, "When you saw him last time, did he mention that he had visited the He family?" "Not a word." Jacqueline continued, "I find this person suspicious. He runs a chemical trading company, and it would be too easy for him to get those materials for committing crimes. The clue about Wu Gang was also provided by him. Maybe he is the murderer." Greg Wong squinted and thought, then shook his head after a while, "But I feel that his physical characteristics don't match the fat man in the video. The fat man wore so many clothes and covered his head and face. As long as he changes his appearance, no one can recognize him. Someone like him, with a family and a career, shouldn't be doing this. Who knows? Anyway, I think the murderer is either Wu Gang, who hasn't been found yet, or him. How about I check on Leo Liu as well?" Greg Wong nodded. "That's fine. The range of suspects is already very small now. Jasmine Gan's classmates who pursued her during university, if we check them one by one, we will find out." At that moment, Jacqueline's phone rang. He answered and after a while, hung up and said, "Boss, it's Sander Su from the prosecutor's office. He said he remembered some things that might help us solve the case." Greg Wong hummed and said, "Good. I was just thinking of finding him. When is he coming?" "I've arranged for after lunch." "Great. Bring him to my office then." Xander Su was conflicted about whether to directly expose Chaischen or, as Chaischen said, to tell the police about Wu Gang and Leo Liu, and also say that he had pursued Jasmine Gan. He needed to reassess the risks and determine how deep he was involved. He regretted knowing Chaischen, and even more so when he learned of Chaishen's crazy plan during their first meeting after Chaischen returned to the country. He didn't report it decisively, and even though he said they should cut ties, he ended up inadvertently telling him the principle of monitoring mobile phone signals and advised him to change his SIM card every time he made a call. Thinking back, it was entirely unnecessary to say that. Even if he hadn't mentioned it, the principle of mobile phone signal monitoring wasn't a particularly secret thing. Chaischen could easily ask any electronics engineer. A single sentence dragged him into this case as well. If the police eventually catch Chaischen, will they find out that he was an informant, not only about the mobile phone signals but also repeatedly reminding him to return to the United States? He analyzed it over and over. His interactions with Chaischen hadn't been noticed by anyone, and Chaischen said he always took care to avoid surveillance cameras during their meetings, so there was no evidence of their interactions. As long as Chaischen didn't confess, the police couldn't know he was an informant. But Greg Wong is an experienced criminal investigation expert. Would he suspect me? Once he suspects me, if he pressures Chaischen to confess during interrogation, no one can hold back under such circumstances. Reporting Chaischen now would ruin 10 years of hard work and might even lead to imprisonment. not reporting him. If Chase Chin is caught and exposes me later, I can't escape either. No matter which path I choose, the expected value of the whole situation is negative. Xander Su was in a dilemma. The best outcome would be if the police never catch Chase Chin, so everyone can live in peace. With this bit of wishful thinking, Xander Su still made the call to Jack Lin, ready to tell the police as Chase Chin had said. Wu Gang had madly pursued Jasmine Gan, and Leo Lu was Jasmine Gan's boyfriend. Chase Chin wanted me to say I also pursued Jasmine Gan, succeeded, and then broke up with her, which never happened, but the police can't verify whether I pursued Jasmine Gan or not. But what's the use of saying this? What's Chase Chin's purpose? In the afternoon, Xander Su arrived at the Public Security Bureau, and Jack Lin led him to Greg Wong's office. After sitting down without much small talk, Greg Wong asked, Xander, you told Captain Lin you remembered some information to tell us. What is it? It's like this. I remembered that Jasmine Gan once mentioned to me that during university, there was a guy in her major who pursued her for several years and often followed her, scaring her at the time, until he left after graduation. Jasmine Gan only mentioned this to me briefly before, so I didn't remember it last time. Greg, do you think this information is useful? Greg Wong smiled and said, Is that person Wu Gang? Xander Su pretended to be surprised, so you've already investigated it. I don't know his name, but I remember it seemed to be Wu. Greg Wong nodded. This person is also our current key investigation target, but this guy's family has moved away, and we're still waiting for the results from the local police. Xander Su said, There's another thing. Jasmine Gan had a boyfriend during university. Greg Wong was a bit surprised. Oh? She had a boyfriend? Yes, he was the class president of their major, named Leo. Leo? What's his name? Greg Wong blurted out. Leo Lu. Yes, Leo Lu. Greg Wong suddenly stood up and said, You're saying Leo Lu was Jasmine Gan's boyfriend? Xander Su was startled by his sudden action and stammered. Yes. How do you know? Jasmine Gan told me many years ago. Greg Wong looked at him suspiciously. Why didn't you mention it last time? I forgot at that time. Remembered today? So you came to tell us? Yes. Wu Gang and Leo Lu. You suddenly remembered them today? Yes. Greg Wong laughed, turned back to sit down, looked at Xander Su, and spoke in a softer tone. What made you suddenly remember these two people today? Although Xander Su had prepared his story, he hadn't expected Greg Wong to ask this question, and he was taken aback, stammering, There's something I want to confess, hoping Greg won't pursue it. Greg Wong looked at him with a smile and said, Go ahead, as long as it doesn't involve principal issues, it's just a chat between us. Actually, I already knew about Wu Gang and Leo Lu. Oh, why didn't you say so last time? Because at that time, I didn't want the murderer to be caught. Greg Wong curiously asked, You don't have a grudge against the River family, right? Or are you friends with Wu Gang and Leo Lu? Xander Su shook his head. I have no grudge against the River family and don't know Wu Gang and Leo Lu. But Jasmine Gan was my ex-girlfriend. What? Greg Wong's surprise was evident. Xander Su continued to fabricate his lie. After graduation, I passed the exam to enter the prosecutor's office. I'm not a local, with no relatives or friends here. Later, I found out Jasmine Gan was also in Jean County, so I pursued her, and we were together for a while. Later, due to some issues, I proposed a breakup. But afterwards, we still kept in touch as friends. When the first case happened, after I learned about the situation, I guessed that the murderer might be one of Wu Gang and Leo Lu. They killed River's wife and children, and when I visited the He family, I heard a lot about how River's wife and children had repeatedly troubled the He family after Jasmine Gan's incident, so I didn't want the murderer to be caught, and that's why. That's why I didn't tell you the truth at that time. After listening, Greg Wong thought silently for a while, nodded, and said, All right, I understand your consideration at the time, although it's not appropriate given your position. Don't worry, I'll keep this matter confidential for you. Heh, no wonder, after River killed He Jianxing, besides me wanting to catch River, your prosecutor's office was the most active, probably because of your insistence. Xander Su didn't deny it. Vincent had a lot of influence, and in the end, he was protected. Actually, if River had been caught at that time, there wouldn't have been so many problems later. Now Li Gang's family has also been killed. The murderer is too cruel. After thinking it over these past few days, I still want to be honest with you. Greg Wong said, Actually, I should thank you. The clues you provided today are helpful. If you hadn't said anything, It would have been your personal privacy right, and I couldn't blame you for anything. I went to the He family this morning to learn about some situations. Originally, I was wondering why, after the He family's incident, relatives and friends were avoiding them. But He Jianxing's mother said you visited them several times. I was curious, but it turns out you were Jasmine Gan's ex-boyfriend. Heh, no wonder. Xander Su was startled again. He had never thought that visiting the He family would raise suspicions. If he hadn't mentioned today that he was Jasmine Gan's ex-boyfriend, wouldn't Greg Wong suspect him? Was it possible that Liu Lu had thought of this, so he suggested Xander mention his past pursuit of Jasmine Gan to clear himself of any involvement? Or did he have another motive? All Xander could do was to hide his various thoughts and said, Director Wong, my relationship with Jasmine Gan was many years ago. Over the years, we've been just friends. I'm getting married next year, and if it weren't for this case, I wouldn't have brought up these past events. I hope you can understand my situation. Don't worry. I've said this is a private conversation. Your father-in-law, Dean Hong, won't know. Xander nodded gratefully. After Xander left, Greg Wong thought for a while. His suspicion about Xander visiting the He family had dissipated. Now, the most important thing was to investigate Wu Gang and Liu Lu, especially Liu Lu. The most important clue obtained from Xander today was that Liu Lu was once Jasmine Gan's boyfriend, a fact that Lu himself had not disclosed. Especially since Lu had visited Jean County and seen the He family around the time River's wife and child were murdered, he was highly suspicious. Moreover, Lu owned a chemical trading company, making it easy for him to obtain the chemicals needed for a crime. Lu's height and build also roughly matched the description of the fat man. Although it seemed unlikely for someone with a career and a family to commit such acts, the psychology of crime does not follow a 100% predictable pattern. Various signs indicated that Lu was the primary target of the investigation at this stage. What worried him the most was that the cases involving the Jiang and Li families indicated that the murderer had an accomplice, in addition to the fat man. Whether the murderer was Liu Lu or Wu Gang, who was this accomplice, and what relation did they have with Jasmine Gan? Shortly after Xander left, Jack Lin came in to report to Greg Wong, "Boss, as you requested, we've inquired about the whereabouts of over 50 car owners on Annell Road on the night of the Lee family incident. More than 40 car owners said they were at home that night, except for 4 who live alone. The others all have family members to vouch for them. Another 8 car owners said they were with friends. We still need to further investigate these alibis." "What about the 4 who live alone?" 2 men and 2 women. "It's unlikely to be the women. We only need to—" Greg Wong interrupted. "Right now, we have no evidence to determine the gender of the fat man's accomplice. If the accomplice turns out to be a woman, we might miss them if we don't investigate thoroughly. Among these 50-plus car owners, everyone, including the women, needs to be scrutinized equally." "Understood. I'll be careful. Tell me more about those 4. 2 men, one in his 30s who owns a store, and one in his 20s, a foreigner working in a private enterprise in the county. Both women are under 30, also foreigners, one without a fixed job and the other a teacher. Do any of them know Jasmine Gan?" Jack Lin shook his head. "They have no familial relations with Jasmine Gan or the He family." Upon questioning, all 4 stated they do not know her, but I think the murderer wouldn't admit it anyway, so we need to find a way to continue the investigation. Greg Wong nodded, however. This accomplice may not necessarily know Jasmine Gan directly. Perhaps this accomplice is just an acquaintance of the fat man and unrelated to Jasmine Gan. So, we need to find a way to clarify who among them has such a friend who is a chemical engineer and fat. That's difficult to investigate. Greg Wong understood, as just Jasmine Gan's social circle alone had taken so long to clarify. Despite advances in technology and detailed data in police computers, it's only possible to record an individual's direct familial relations, never their entire social circle. Thinking about finding out everyone a person has known in their lifetime is challenging, even for the person themselves, let alone for the investigators. Fortunately, there's one most valuable clue at the moment. The fat man is the main perpetrator and also a classmate of Jasmine Gan. Greg Wong fell silent for a moment, then asked, "How's the investigation on Jasmine Gan's classmates going?" "We're checking the classmates who meet the height requirement one by one. Many have changed their contact information and are currently unreachable. This part of the work will take more time." As for Wu Gang, the community finally confirmed that his family were foreigners and have moved back to their hometown. After investigating their hometown, we learned that the whole family has immigrated to Canada. We're trying to contact Wu Gang's relatives in China to get the latest contact information. As for Liu Lu, we've started investigating this afternoon. Right? Call Liu Lu and have him come in tomorrow. To our county bureau? Greg Wong snorted coldly and nodded. Yes, Xander Su just told me that Liu Lu is Jasmine Gan's ex-boyfriend. What? Jacqueline was clearly surprised. This guy is very dishonest. Last time, he didn't mention his relationship with Jasmine Gan to me at all. Plus, he happened to visit Jean County and see the He family around the time of the Jiang family incident. I find him very suspicious. If it really was him. Jacqueline pondered, Boss, if we call him over, would it alert him? What if he runs away? Greg Wong, reminded by him, immediately said, Right, you're correct. If he's the murderer, this would alert him. Let's do this. First contact the city bureau and have someone keep an eye on Liu Lu. Then call him and tell him to come, not tomorrow, but the day after. Tomorrow, you continue to investigate Liu Lu's various situations. These two cases lack direct evidence, and I'm only suspecting Liu Lu, so we can't forcibly detain him for questioning. The best approach is to gather as much information as possible, so when he comes, if there are any inconsistencies in his story, we can directly target him. I'll get on it right away. After days of surveillance, Chase Chen finally figured out the security routine of Vincent Fan's residential complex, Dijing Yuan. This high-ranking official's residential complex was guarded 24 hours a day. Even at night, although the guards were in the guardhouse, the entrance was well lit, and there was a barrier at the gate. With few people entering or exiting the complex, sneaking in at night was too risky. If caught by the guards, all previous efforts would be in vain. But after all, this wasn't Zongnanhai, just a county-level official's residential complex. No matter how tight the security, there were always loopholes. Chase Chen found such a loophole one morning. Every morning between 5 and 8 o'clock, several people delivering milk and newspapers would enter the complex, and the guards didn't question these individuals. Those delivering newspapers wore postal uniforms, and their electric bikes had green newspaper bags. Those delivering milk had their brands boxes on their electric bikes. The only concern was whether the guards, who saw these few people come and go every day, would pay special attention if a new face appeared among the milk deliverers one day. It needed to be tested. If he could enter the complex disguised as a milk delivery worker, it would prove that the guards didn't recognize faces but judged by clothing and profession. If stopped, he could simply claim to be from the milk company. The binoculars had already been purchased. He would take them to the hill behind later to stake out and figure out which building Vincent Fan lived in. All right, once all the preparations were done, he needed to consider how to deal with Vincent Fan and his wife. Since their son and daughter both worked in government agencies and other places, Chase Chen didn't plan to include them. He wasn't someone who wanted to kill everyone involved. If possible, he preferred to kill as few people as necessary to achieve the overall plan. But now, he had no choice. Vincent Fan had to die for the plan to work. The method used on Li Gang's family was effective, but it had already been used. Vincent Fan, being part of the police system, would naturally be aware of this incident, so it probably wouldn't work on him. Directly killing with a weapon was also not an option. Chase Chen was not in good health and couldn't handle a fight against an ordinary person, let alone Vincent Fan, who was a police officer. Using explosives, although he was confident he was more proficient in making explosives than Jasmine Gan, required a lot of explosives to destroy a villa and kill the people inside. It would also be troublesome to set up. After thinking it over, he decided to continue using poison. Cyanide was the best choice, but the spray bottle idea had already been used, and he couldn't think of a better device for now. He was just a chemical engineering PhD and didn't have much talent for mechanical devices. Modifying the spray bottle was already the limit of his manual skills. After thinking for a while, he felt dizzy again and quickly took out a pill from the card to take. Time was running out. He was confident that the police's first round of investigation wouldn't catch him, but what about the second round? The third round? If he didn't complete the plan quickly, the police would definitely catch him. The result would not only fail to achieve the plan's goal, but could even backfire. He had to act quickly. All right, how exactly to kill Vincent Fan and his family would be carefully considered later. After figuring out the method, the last and most crucial step was to create an alibi. Without an alibi, the plan would still have flaws, and it would also fail to protect my friend. It didn't matter if I was caught, but if the police identified my friend's identity, then everything I had done would have been in vain. I couldn't forgive myself. Protecting that person was far more important than my own life. As long as that person was safe, even if I died, well, would it matter? But to protect that person, the prerequisite was to create my alibi. This way, even if Greg Wong was clever, he would ultimately be running in vain in a cycle of failure. The best way to create an alibi was to have someone vouch for me.